This is Jiakai's story of how he made a grave mistake, and it cost him but also taught him a valuable lesson. But before we begin, make sure you watch the previous episode just for a follow-up. Our story begins with Jiakai, the world's first trillionaire worth $300 trillion. His fortune made from stealing his teacher Miss Candace's wedding ring, worth $300 trillion. How did she get it? Some rumor it was because her husband inherited it and didn't understand the value. Jiakai somehow dreamt up his plan for fame and fortune whilst he was still in potty training. Yes, you heard that right. Jiakai always thinks back to toddlers who struggle and says they can make trillions. His mother started supporting him the day she found out the paddling pool he had stolen from a little girl next door, since the days had passed. He had been going into this paddling pool in his nappies and not his swimsuit. When his mother realized, she knew Jiakai would one day become famous. Jiakai lived with his mother and three sisters back in Shanghai. Whenever he got the opportunity, he used to play with coins on the floor. His mother couldn't afford trousers, so he only wore a shirt and nappy at home. The only trousers he ever wore until he was 5 were the ones he wore to school. He lived with his three sisters, only born 1 year after him, so his mother had 4 children, all in nappies. After stealing Miss Candace's ring, he now lived in a mansion in Oman, 25,000 guards, 340 bathrooms, 100 bedrooms, 8 kitchens, and 1,000 pools. He is now 22 years old. The money, however, needed to come from somewhere. You can't buy small countries or own all this with nothing. He doesn't work, hence he needs to do something. That's where the annual London Modern Art Charity Auction comes in. Every year, all 15 of the world's trillionaires, as well as many billionaires and millionaires, meet in London to purchase and invest in fine art. Jiakai always buys the most expensive piece. Last year, he bought one for $2.5 trillion and resold it for $5.6 trillion, making huge profits from the investment. But this year was going to be different. Jiakai traveled to the auction in his 80-car motorcade and private Boeing 747. He bribed Boeing to complete before Air Force One. 9,787 Dreamliners and 8 fighter jets, as well as another 5 Dreamlifters, travel together in the sky. It is the most secure transport in the world, costing an estimated $132 trillion. Upon arriving in London, his motorcade was unloaded from the plane and he hopped in and headed to the auction hall. They arrived at the auction hall, red carpet out and paparazzi photographers, but something was telling Jiakai this year was going to be difficult. After arriving in London, Jiakai saw the purchase he wanted to make. Mrs. Michael K. Pincus, a black dot on a white canvas, the auctioneer said with pride. Starting at $1 the black dot, any takers? It went up from $1 to $2 to $5 to $5 million to $500 million to $500 billion. The competition was fierce. Buyers found whatever change they had on them and put it on top of their offers. Jiakai, in the end, bought the piece for $6.7 trillion, his most expensive purchase to date. After his expensive purchase, Jiakai stepped on stage, all cameras pointing at him. There, he met the artist. Jiakai then asked the artist if they could travel to Oman to discuss reselling. He knew the artist would only get so few. Jiakai traveled back to Oman with his painting inside a vault in the aircraft. Him and Michael K. Pincus had a detailed but avid conversation about reselling. Mrs. Pincus spoke cleverly but beautifully. She said it was only enough to feed her daughter.
She's only 3?
Jiakai had seen through her. He was ready to ask for more information, but he was also ready to fund her, give her a huge profit. He was sick of paying the orphanages. He knew the artists were the ones who toiled for the orphans. He now wanted to give back to them.
I'll give you 50% of the profits for when we resell the painting.
Mrs. Pincus needed a lot of money. She couldn't afford clothes, so all her daughter wore at home was a nappy.
The only other clothes she wore were the ones she went to school in. Jiakai was sure of this from the beginning. He was concerned about the information, but now he could see through her. He remembered himself, a little boy growing up in Shanghai, dreaming of big things, stealing paddling pools and playing in coins, only wearing a shirt and nappy.
They landed in Oman and sold it on the street, starting at $1. They got in their motorcade and set off for a square where they would start selling. Jiakai thought the competition would be fierce, But in reality, the first person who bought it only gave the dollar and there was no competition. Jiakai got his profit and shared it with the artist. He then ran home in tears, thinking about how much better the day could have gone. But then realized he had a private motorcade too. He ran back to the square crying and traveled through the city in his motorcade home. Then he found his mother at home. They sat in the study not talking, but then Jiakai spoke.
I'm a failure, Mother. I sold all my finances and I'm gonna be bankrupt.
Now, Jiakai, you still have plenty of money. I'm sure everything is gonna be okay.
He needed to make trillions from the paintings he had only bought for a few billion, and he couldn't do it.
Jiakai, remember the day you stole that little girl's paddling pool as you came out of that pool? And as I changed your nappy and realized it was stolen, do you remember what happened?
Mom, you're the best. I know exactly what to do.
Jiakai had had a mind wave. He was still a trillionaire, so he could just buy the painting back from the child and then resell it to a more respectable buyer. Jiakai immediately got back in his motorcade and rushed through town. They headed to the artist's plane. He then said he was going to give her 50 cents entirely and buy it back, get another buyers, and buy it for a huge profit. Jiakai got his painting back and sold it for trillions, boosting his wealth majorly, and he only had to thank his mother. The 3-year-old girl, she now attends private school and one day hopes to steal an expensive $1 trillion ring and become just like Jiakai. They now live in a penthouse apartment in New York City. And the lesson learnt today by Jiakai: you can go from plotting to become a trillionaire while still in potty training, to making a poor investment, to helping other kids in your shoes fill your dream. But please don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for another video just like this one.